Arsenic is a heavy metal. It's a toxin that occurs naturally in our environment. Historically, however, American cotton farmers made the situation a whole lot worse by dumping 30,000 tonnes of arsenic-containing pesticides on millions of acres of cotton fields across the South. And then, arsenic-containing antibiotics have been fed to chickens to speed up their growth and turn their flesh a pretty pink. Then we spread chicken manure across our farms. That means further contamination. So it shouldn't surprise us that arsenic shows up in our food chain. Now, in animal meat, it's thought to not be in a form that was harmful, though that's now under question. Whereas in plant foods, it's in its inorganic form, and that's dangerous. And there's one food that we often eat a lot of, and that's rice. Rice sequesters arsenic. It literally pulls it out of the soil. And by the way, that soil was contaminated way before the organic industry started, and so organic rice has the same amount of arsenic as non-organic rice, and that really is a problem. So what are the effects of chronic exposure to arsenic? Well, it's a class 1 carcinogen. That means definitely proven to produce cancer, and it's responsible for many cases of cancer of the bladder, the lung, and skin. But how much risk is it? Well, the FDA has calculated that if someone were to eat half a cup of brown rice every day through their lifetime, their risk of cancer across their lives is 166 times greater than if they didn't eat rice at all. Plus, it increases the risk of heart disease, diabetes, skin disease, hypertension, kidney disease, and strokes. It also suppresses our immune system. Now, with so many choices of rice in the supermarket, you might be asking, is there a particular type that we could choose to reduce our risk? Well, what the FDA measured is that white long grain rice has about 102 parts per billion, medium grain white rice about 80, short grain white rice about the same. Now, that may actually be not due to the rice, but because of where it's grown. California is less contaminated than the South, like Arkansas and Texas, where most of the long grain rice is grown. So you might be asking, well, what about wild rice, red rice, black rice? They actually do have less than white rice, again, depending on where they're grown. And brown rice, whether it's long grain, medium grain, or short grain, has about 150 parts per billion, so it's higher even than white rice. But maybe arsenic will stick to the bran on the outside and not be released into our bodies, but just pass right through the gut. When they tested that, they looked at how much goes into the body and then gets excreted through the kidneys, and it was the same whether you ate white rice or brown rice. So that seems to be true. But are there brands or sources of rice that we should be pursuing when we choose which rice to buy in the supermarket? Well, US rice has the highest levels of arsenic in the world for the reasons that I told you about, except for California, which is on par with Asia, and they have about half the levels of arsenic as the other kinds of rice that we get in America. But a word of caution about Asian rice: if it's grown in Sri Lanka, it may have cadmium in it because that's commonly used as a pesticide there. Now, if we're still going to eat rice, you can get rid of 50% of the arsenic if you cook it like pasta. You know, with pasta, we put a lot of water in the pot, we bring it to the boil, we throw in the pasta. Well, you can do the same, but with 6 to 10 times as much water as rice. So if you're going to cook 1 cup of rice, you'd put 10 cups of water or 6 cups of water into that pot, get it boiling, and then throw in your rice. And at the end of cooking, you pour off the water and leave it to sit for about 20 minutes before serving it, and it'll still be fluffy. Now, you will lose some of the nutrients when you do that, but it's probably worth it because the increased risk from cancer probably outweighs the benefit you would have got from that nutrient, if you see what I mean, because your risk of cancer goes down from 166 times to 66 times above normal. Now, rather than eating boiled rice, we need to think about how else we may be consuming rice, because it's hidden in some of these other ingredients or foods on our supermarket shelves. Rice Krispies or bars like this contain rice flour, Rice Krispies, different ways that rice sneaks in there, and often they will also contain brown rice syrup. Other baked goods can do that too. Rice milk is also something that we need to bear in mind when we're looking at the different plant milks. Children under the age of 5 should not have rice milk because they are more at risk from this arsenic effect. And you might think about not feeding rice to children even under the age of 5. Then there's rice pasta for those of us that might be gluten-free, rice cakes, rice crackers. They're all ways that rice sneaks onto our plate without us even thinking about it. So that raises the question as to whether we should avoid all rice from our diet. After all, there are a number of other whole grain options. Of course, Asians are very used to consuming rice on a daily basis, and they might stick with eating that rice, but think about where to source it from. But for the rest of us, perhaps replacing rice with quinoa or couscous is a better way to go.